Welcome to the leading podcast for long-term weight management. Subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss an episode. You can connect with Jenny on all social media channels. You can also sign up to the newsletter to receive frequent content and tips for weight loss success.
Hey guys, welcome to the Power Over Food podcast. I am your host, Jenny McDonald, and I am the Food Freedom Fairy. I help women lose weight and find peace with food without dieting. I like to say the magic of losing weight without the diet. So welcome. If you are a regular listener, thanks for listening. If this is your first time listening to the Power Over Food podcast, hello, welcome. Please drop me a message. Let me know what resonates with you. Anyway, I'm going to dive straight in today because I just want to share some thoughts around food. And I don't often talk specifically about food because I'm a big believer in it's a change in our relationship with food is about managing our thoughts, our feelings, and understanding how we've come to use food over the years and that relationship with food as opposed to knowing what to eat. So I spend very little time talking about this. And it is my belief that my listeners, at least the majority of you, will know exactly how to nourish your body. You will know exactly what foods feel good, but actually choosing those foods can be a completely different matter because when you are eating on emotion, you don't want to necessarily choose the foods that nourish your body. And certainly when you're stuck in the blood sugar roller coaster and in that cycle of craving sugar, it's very hard to choose something different because your body and your mind is craving something that is going to hit your bloodstream really quick. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So what I wanted to do is share a couple of concepts, one being the blood sugar roller coaster and one being eating more like Farmer Giles. And the reason I wanted to share these is because they really resonated with me when I learnt them. And even though I thought I was doing really well with my weight management journey once I'd lost weight, when I came across these in my training to be a health and life coach, it was like something hit me and went, oh my goodness, what am I still doing with food? I'm still really not choosing things that serve my body, that give me energy. I'm still focusing on calories. And that's, again, from those ingrained messages, dieting messages that we've received over the years as we've tried to lose weight and change our relationship with food. I always say, take what resonates, leave the rest. I am very conscious when we talk about food that it can be a trigger. And I am not telling you by any means what to eat. These are just some guidance, some of my thoughts, some of my learnings that you might find helpful. But please don't ever think I am telling you to follow a certain way of eating because we are all unique. And we all need to work out what works for us and also what works for us at different points in our lives. Because the way of eating when you are, living on your own will be completely different to the way you eat if you're living with a family. Let's start off with eating more like Farmer Giles. Farmer Giles concept was introduced to me, as I say, in my health and life coach training by Kari Peters, the founder of the Health Coach Institute. And it just, as I say, really, really resonated me. It's a way of thinking about what you're eating without counting calories, without thinking about the macros or using any other method, points, sins. It's just a way that's really, really simple. So if you haven't guessed it already, Farmer Giles is a farmer and he lives on a farm. He lives with his family and they grow their own crops. They grow beautiful, different colours, different variety of vegetables, fruit. They have contacts within the farming industry so that they can get their hands on the best produce. And they rear and nurture their own animals. So if you do eat meat, they eat the best quality. And I know that's not always possible because of costs. But just to give you an idea, this is Farmer Giles. As they cook as a family, They bake using all of their own produce, and they have a really colourful diet. Their cupboards are packed with various nuts, seeds, lentils, chickpeas, and whole grains such as brown rice and quinoa. And there is very little in the way of packets and tins in their kitchen cupboards. So if you can just imagine wherever you are right now, over on your left is Farmer Giles. Now on the right, we have Little Miss Processed. And Little Miss Processed, well, she's a little bit stuck. She's been in the dieting cycle for many years. She's used to focusing solely on calories, and she's super on it with calories. But her freezer and cupboards contain lots of quick foods that are easy to eat, and what I'd call low vibration foods, because they're jam full of additives and preservatives, chemicals, things to keep them lasting longer. And when Little Miss Processed shops, she shops what I'd call unconsciously. She buys what she has always bought. She's easily attracted to shiny labels and claims that say high in fibre or low in fat or 35% less sugar. And she just worries about the calories and nothing else. Now, I'm not sure if you can relate to Little Miss Processed, but I was certainly her for a very long time. Everything was in a tin or out of the freezer. It was or loaves of bread. What I advise you to do is think, who am I more like? If this was on a scale, draw like a line, and Little Miss Processed was over on the right and Farmer Giles on the left, do you sit quite comfortably in the middle? Do you sometimes eat processed foods and sometimes eat like Farmer Giles and his family? Or are you more towards Farmer Giles? Or are you more towards Little Processed? So what I invite you to consider is, who are you more like? And what could you do this week just to take a step closer to Farmer Giles? And depending on where you are, that might be, I'm going to cook one meal this week, more than normal, that is cooking from scratch. It might be that Monday to Thursday is brilliant where food's concerned, but Friday, Saturday and Sunday, it all goes a little bit out the window, a little bit pear-shaped, as we say here in the UK. Now, the other thing I invite you to think about is carbohydrates and the blood sugar roller coaster. First of all, carbs over the years have got a really bad name. There's been a lot of popularity about low carb diets, low carb diets. And there's slogans such as no carbs before marbs, and celebrities are now endorsing low carb or keto eating. So it makes us wonder and question, maybe I should just not eat carbs. And I used to say it myself, I just can't eat carbs. I'll just gain weight if I eat carbs. And when my clients said that, I would agree and say, yeah, I know what you mean. And again, now I understand it more. It isn't that we can't eat carbs. It's about the types of carbs we are choosing to eat. And actually, it's essential for our body to have a source of carbohydrate. We need healthy fats, we need protein, we need fiber, we need carbohydrates. But it's the types of carbohydrates such as bread, white pasta, and cakes, crisps, biscuits that are not doing us any favours. There's a big difference between adding some brown rice to your meal or a sweet potato as opposed to eating bread for breakfast, bread for lunch, and a big bowl of pasta at night. And unfortunately, in the UK, the typical daily diet intake has become something similar to that, whether it's toast or cereals for breakfast, high in sugar, processed carbs, a sandwich for lunch, and a meal loaded with pasta, white rice and potatoes. It's not particularly high in protein, that type of diet during your day, and it's not particularly high in fibre. You're probably not eating enough of the things you need to eat for a balanced, healthy diet. There's not a huge amount of maybe vegetables and whole grains and nuts and seeds. And this isn't necessarily just about weight loss. This is about our overall health, including our mental health, because when we are not eating to serve and nourish our body, we don't always feel great. We will have dips in our mood. We will feel dizzy, shaky, and have brain fog, struggle to concentrate because we are in this cycle with food that is not serving us. And because of the way the food industry has evolved and our diets have evolved, being on the blood sugar roller coaster has become really, really popular. Certainly in the UK and the US, and there's many people riding on the blood sugar roller coaster every day, and they don't even realise they've bought a ticket for the ride. So let's just look at what is going on inside your body when you eat. So as your food is digested, the body's glucose levels start to spike, and it will spike high or lower depending on what you've eaten. So when it spikes, our body produces insulin to allow this glucose to be used and to bring the body back into balance. Now, the higher the spike, the more insulin is produced. And your body will either come back into a nice balance, or again, depending on the food that you've eaten, it will dip and crash. So when eating a balanced diet, mainly whole foods, this process tends to be more stable within our body. There is less of a spike because the food that we're eating, high in protein, high in healthy fats, good complex carbohydrates, fiber, that takes time to be digested, and it takes time to be filtered into the bloodstream, and therefore we don't have such a high spike. However, when we're eating highly processed diet foods, processed carbs, bread, pasta, biscuits, cakes, quick breakfast bars, on-the-go stuff, then they're usually high in sugar, and this rushes into our bloodstream. So the glucose spike is higher. Additional insulin is then produced to help manage the spike and to help get the glucose into our body's cells. But as our body works hard to regain the balance, we dip because there's loads of insulin being produced to bring us into balance. We dip and we experience that crash. And this is when we get sugar cravings. If you know you crave food every couple of hours, then it's likely that this is why. And you might feel, as I said before, low mood, shaky, dizziness. The body craves sugar as opposed to anything else because it is the quickest way it can get some glucose into the system again. So what happens then? You eat the high carb, processed food, the sugary snack, your glucose levels spike, and then you are back in the cycle. Now, what's really important to notice as well is being in this cycle has a long-term impact on our physical health and our mental health. Being in this cycle also means that we're likely to overeat because we are eating in a response to these cravings and these low moods. So not only are you fighting maybe an emotional hunger if you're an emotional eater, but you're also fighting your body's cravings, natural cravings, because of what is going on in the system. And higher insulin production can actually trigger our body to store more fat. So when our glycogen stores are full, the insulin will promote the conversion of excess glucose into your fat cells through lipogenesis. And this stored fat can then accumulate in your tissue and lead over time to weight gain. Now, I don't know about you, I love going on roller coasters. You may or may not be a fan. And I love that intense speed, that rush, the twists, the turns. And actually, when we went to Disney, if there wasn't a queue or if we had a fast pass, I would go on twice. However, after 3 or 4 times, I know I would feel pretty sick. And it is the same with our bodies. If you are riding the blood sugar roller coaster, eventually you will feel pretty naff. How can you switch to riding the slow train? Well, I'm just going to share some really simple tips. And I'm not going to go into counting. I'm just going to give you basics. First one, and this one is a game changer, eat protein with every single meal. Okay. Second one, increase the number of vegetables you are eating. Third one, eat healthy fats. Things like nuts, seeds, check your oils, eat avocado, healthy fats that serve your body well. All of these things take longer to digest in our body. They're essential for our body, and they will keep you fuller for longer. So you're less likely to be craving food every couple of hours. The other thing I invite you to do is be more selective with your carbohydrate choices. So aim to eat carbohydrates found in vegetables, found in things like lentils, chickpeas, grains such as brown rice, quinoa, buckwheat, rather than bread, pasta, and crackers and any other processed foods. And finally, try not to eat naked carbs. So try and pair protein or healthy fat with your carbs. So let me just give you a few examples of how you might use this guidance. If you're currently having toast for breakfast, add a couple of eggs. See if you can, you can drop the toast if you want, but I'm a big believer in adding in food, not taking away. And if you decide actually by adding in a couple of eggs, maybe even if you make it an omelette with some veg in, you might actually decide you don't need the bread. Switch cereals, which are often high in sugar. There's only probably 1 or 2 cereals out there that are not. And switch it to a protein-rich breakfast. That could be the eggs, it could be a Greek yogurt with a handful of nuts and some berries, which are protein, healthy fats. Or try something like a Mediterranean breakfast board with tomatoes, cucumbers, which are great fibre, olives, healthy fat, hummus, meats or cheeses, which is your protein. If you're eating fruit, which is high in natural sugar, then eat it after a meal so that you avoid the glucose spike. Or if you're snacking on fruit in the day, pair it with a healthy fat or protein. So pair it with, for example, a handful of almonds, which is your healthy fat. If you are eating, soup for lunchtime, add a side of protein. Add hummus, which is protein, to a salad. Sprinkle it with some seeds or nuts, which is your protein, your healthy fats. And then do things like switch white pasta for whole grain, or even for spiralized courgettes. Add lentils, which is again protein, to your soups. Switch sandwiches to maybe an open sandwich with less bread and pile it high with some protein. And when I talk about protein, there's obviously your meat and your fish and your eggs, which are animal-based proteins, but there are so many other ones like chickpeas, like lentils, like nuts and seeds that are non-animal based products. Cook from scratch wherever possible. And when you are cooking from scratch, try and cook double and just put portions in the freezer so you've always got some for busy days. And small changes like this can just have such a difference to how you're feeling and to your overall diet. And usually by making these sorts of changes, my clients don't need to count calories. They don't need to be worrying too much about portions because what they're eating is just pure, wholesome goodness. And if you want additional guidance on the blood sugar roller coaster, check out Jessie. She's the Glucose Goddess. If you Google Glucose Goddess, she's brought out a couple of books. She's big on social media, and all of what she talks about is incredible. I mean, she does talk about drinking vinegar before a meal, which I'm not in a place where I want to try yet, but one of her tips is lining your stomach with a veggie starter before eating, because that veggie starter apparently creates like a mesh inside so that the food is absorbed slower. So she says, like, if she was going to eat something like a cake, she would do that first to manage the absorption, which I found fascinating. So they're just some tips for today. Another one is reading the labels, being really conscious. Don't buy in like Little Miss Processed to the labels that just tell you they're good for you. that they're low sugar, that they're high in fibre. Read, educate yourself, make sure you're really aware of what is actually in them. So I hope that helps you, and let me know what's resonated with you. Share this podcast with anybody that you feel will benefit from listening, and please, if you're listening on Apple, please do hit review and write me a little review so that I can help be more visible within the space. So wishing you a wonderful day, evening, wherever you are, and I will speak to you guys soon. Take care.